You are listening to Skin, Earth, Vitality, the podcast where ancient wisdom meets modern vitality. If you are seeking to reconnect with your innate vibrancy, you're in the right place. I'm Emily Davis, a seasoned holistic esthetician and herbalist. Join me as we unlock the secrets of ancient skincare practices, explore the beauty of seasonal and nature-based living, herbalism, and true holistic well-being for you and the broader ecosystem. This podcast is brought to you by Stratum Aesthetics. Head to stratumaesthetics.com to find curated skincare, body care, and other wellness products hand-selected by me. Now enjoy the show. Please remember that the information I share in this podcast is based on my personal and professional experiences and is intended for educational and informational purposes only. It is not individualized skincare advice, nor is it medical advice. I encourage you to take charge of your own health decisions and listen to your body, seeking out the resources and professionals that best support your wellness journey. Hey friends, welcome back into Skin, Earth, Vitality. Today we are diving into a topic that I get asked about all of the time, which is perioral dermatitis. This is a skin condition that shows up as a red, inflamed, sometimes bumpy rash, typically around the mouth. You can also see it around the eyes, which is called periocular dermatitis, and it can feel super frustrating. And I want to share my personal experience with it, what finally helped me heal. I want to talk about the modalities that I incorporated, the dietary changes, the skincare. Of course, I want to dive a little bit deeper and talk about the emotional and energetic components of this condition. I want to look at it through a lens of German New Medicine. I want to talk about it through a lens of Ayurveda, and I hope that this is helpful. What I don't want you to come into this episode expecting is me telling you the cure to perioral dermatitis. One person's experience is going to be vastly different than another person's experience, and we can't just take the things that helped me to heal and then superimpose them on your life experience. Instead, my goal is for you to take the things that worked for me and to incorporate them into the investigation that you are performing on your life, on yourself, and hopefully this gives you things to think about more. When I first started experiencing this, I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea really what was going on. And this is speaking as a very experienced esthetician, and I really was just at a loss. And so I hope that this can be the resource that you have needed. So perioral, peri meaning around, and then oral meaning the mouth, and then also periocular means around the eyes. And then dermatitis is really just a blanket term for derma meaning skin, and then itis meaning inflammation. So it's any type of around the mouth skin inflammation. This often gets confused as acne or rosacea because it typically can appear as clusters of small, what are called papules and pustules, which are like small bumps that have fluid in them, really tiny bumps. But it doesn't have to have the bumps. Sometimes it's just flat and scaly. It's very common to show up for women for the first time in their mid-30s. It can also obviously show up earlier or later. It can present in men as well, but most commonly women in their mid-30s. And I put out a question box on Instagram calling for any and all questions that you guys may have about it. And I was shocked at how huge the response was. It's obviously something that's very common in my circle, at least. And it's something that people are interested in and also are maybe confused about. So I will weave the answers to the questions that I got into the topics today. Like I said, this is an around the mouth rash situation. It's often linked to triggers like topical steroid use. Certain skincare products can trigger it. Stress is a big one. Gut issues, permeable gut issues, potential fungal or bacterial overgrowth, liver stagnation, also hormonal changes. And as I said, there's definitely a huge emotional and energetic component here. So when all is said and done, perioral dermatitis is a disruption in your skin's barrier. On the surface of our skin, we have all of these little tiny skin cells that are held together with lipids, aka oils, and it's like a brick and mortar. So you can imagine these little brick and mortar layers being all torn up and the oil that's holding it together being depleted. The barrier disruption includes a disruption also in our microbiome, and this allows opportunistic bacteria or yeasts or fungus to proliferate, which can contribute to inflammation and make everything worse. And then this also is going to trigger an immune response, which is going to also invite in inflammation and redness. We have enzymes called proteases, which normally help with healthy skincare turnover, but they go into overdrive. And when these enzymes become too active, that glue that's holding the bricks together breaks down faster than the skin can rebuild. And this leaves our skin's barrier very weak. It's more prone to inflammation and irritation, and then it makes it slower to heal. So it's like trying to patch a wall while somebody keeps pulling out the bricks faster than you can replace them. And this whole thing can turn into a cycle. And so what we want to do is focus on breaking the cycle, support the healing process, reduce inflammation, and then also support the immune system in the skin. And then I talked about these opportunistic microorganisms, which can produce an overgrowth. So we have a specific type of bacteria and then also yeast called Malassezia, which the skin defenses are down. These microorganisms can start multiplying, triggering this flare up. And then the big thing here is that heavy oil-based products are going to make this so much worse because they can be feeding this yeast, Malassezia. So that's why when you're putting a lot of oil on your skin and you have perioral dermatitis, it's getting worse rather than better, which was the first thing that I was doing. I saw this like little red dry patch on my skin. So I was like, oh, I should put all of the balms on it ever. And it just kept growing and growing. So I first started seeing periocular dermatitis around my eyes when I was about 15. And at that time, my mom had decided it was dairy. And so I stopped eating dairy and it went away for a few years. It came back in my late teens and early 20s. And I would actually do a juice fast. Remember, I grew up with a mom who was a naturopathic doctor. And so I was very in the world of natural medicine. And so I would do a juice fast and it would go away. And then it came back again in my mid-20s. It came back so bad, and this is actually when I first discovered gluten-free eating. This was around 2010, 2011. So I did that, and it was at bay for a few more years until my early 30s when I was at a really toxic job, and it came back the worst it had ever been. And I did all of the things, and it actually wasn't until I left that job that it healed up. So I have always felt that between the stress I was under and probably just not nourishing myself properly, my skin was super rebelling. And it was gone for a few years, and then fast forward to my mid-30s, just a couple of years ago, COVID is happening at this time, which was extremely stressful for me. Having my business shut down was terrifying. The world felt like a madhouse. I did not get vaccinated, and I was really worried that this was something that was going to get forced on me, which felt really scary. And I had clients constantly wanting to know if I was getting it. I had a client really upset when I told her that I was not going to be, and she stormed out. She left and canceled all of her appointments, which was like, oh my God, am I going to just lose my business over this? The thing that I've spent so long building and something that I like wrap my identity up in. And so that was happening. And I also felt at this time that I really couldn't speak my truth. And so that's going to come back later in the episode when I'm talking about the energetics around this. But that was happening. I was in a constant fight or flight state. And I started to notice this weird patch of dry skin forming under my nose, and then like weird breakouts below my mouth. So I'm thinking like, okay, I should put like a salve on this, some oils, and it's just getting worse and worse over time and growing. And I cannot figure out why it's getting worse. And that just felt awful because like I'm supposed to know what I'm doing here. So then late that same winter, my dad gets diagnosed with leukemia. And then that summer, my absolute soul dog, Daisy Fuentes, she was my Great Dane, beautiful, black, gorgeous, regal girl. She started having some health problems for the first time, and she starts having seizures, which was so hard to watch. And as all of this is happening, no surprise, my skin just keeps getting worse. So then that next fall, this skin issue that had been going on for about a year now, I'm finishing herb school on a deadline, which I meant at that time if I wasn't working, I was working on school. And so I was ordering takeout for almost every meal, just trying to crank these hours out. And then October of that year, I got blindsided. We took Daisy into the vet for what I thought was just to get her some painkillers because I had thought she was having a hard time getting up the steps because maybe she had arthritis. But instead, we were told that she had a really aggressive cancer and only had 8 weeks to live. So cue my skin just getting absolutely awful. It was around my entire mouth at this time. It was so painful. I remember that Thanksgiving getting ready to go to dinner and having a little mentee bee because I didn't want to go. I was so stressed at the thought of someone without any malintention, but just someone asking me what was going on with my skin. And I was just like imagining everyone looking at it and I couldn't deal. So I like cried my eyes out, got myself together. I did go. No one said anything, but I just remember crying in the bathroom, trying to put makeup on over it so vividly and it being so painful. And it was just awful. So during this time, I'm literally trying all of the things. I consulted a skin psychic. You name it, I did it. I will say I was struggling with doing the work that I probably should have done from the beginning, which was to 1, stop drinking, start eating better, but I wanted it to be a different answer. So Daisy passed on December 27th, exactly 8 weeks after that vet appointment. It was 2 days after Christmas, and I had never been through anything as intense as losing her and having to actually be the one to make that decision to say goodbye. And after it was over, Joel, my partner, and I were just kind of looking at each other like, okay, now what? And he was like, let's get out of town for a couple of days. I don't feel like we should just walk around here over the next 2 weeks that I had off from work. So we drove down to Santa Fe and to Ojo Caliente. And for the first time in a really long time, I allowed myself to let go, to surrender, to rest. And I felt so sad, but I was finally able to enjoy myself. And I know this sounds insane, but within a few days after, my skin started to actually feel like skin again. And I remember being in the Airbnb, just like completely shocked that my skin was finally healing. So that's my story. I want to share the things I was doing in the months leading up to the healing that I think made the biggest impact. And again, I'm not saying what's going to work for you, but they might be worth checking out. The first thing is looking for sodium lauryl sulfate in toothpaste, in laundry detergent. My toothpaste was good, but I was using 7th generation laundry detergent, which is such a greenwashed brand anyways, but it works and it was at Sprouts, so I was using it. So I quit that. The next is check for fluoride in toothpaste. I wasn't using fluoride toothpaste, but this is often recommended to check for, so I do want to throw it in there. Fluoride can irritate sensitive skin around the mouth, especially the skin barrier. If it's already compromised, it can trigger it to become worse. And then also it can kind of sit on the skin. So check for that. Switch your toothpaste if needed. The next thing is food, and food is such a loaded topic, but when I am experiencing inflammatory skin issues, I do like to cut out dairy, sugar, gluten, corn, processed foods. And that doesn't mean forever, because I'm actually back to I will eat einkorn flour, which is a ancient wheat. I eat sourdough all of the time, only if I make it myself or if it's a homemade sourdough. But I find that that's not problematic for me at this point in time. But for a long time, I did cut those out to just help quell the inflammation. And gut permeability and skin permeability are very closely tied. Leaky skin and leaky gut are closely connected because they share a relationship between the immune system, and through hormones, the skin's microbiome and the gut's microbiome actually have a back and forth communication that happens. And so it's very interesting. They are the exact same type of cells. And so when that barrier is compromised in the gut, chances are you're going to have that barrier compromised on the skin, and vice versa. So the next thing is alcohol. And this can be a toughie depending on where your current relationship with alcohol is. But it is important to keep in mind that it is creating additional inflammation in the body. It took me a really long while to decide that the inflammation on my skin wasn't worth it. I have gone on and off of alcohol for the last 10 years, like large periods of time without alcohol, and then I'll start drinking again, maybe here and there, maybe it leads to more, but it's taken me, I would say 5 to 10 years to be in a place that I feel really good with my relationship with alcohol. I'll have a glass of wine here and there if I feel like it, but for the most part, it just feels kind of boring. Alcohol dehydrates the skin and strips it of the essential lipids that are the ones that hold the bricks together. And it can also disrupt the gut microbiome again, which can have a negative impact on skin that's trying to heal. The next thing, I really started to take my body's natural detox mechanism more seriously. That was when I got really serious about castor oil packs. I will do a whole episode on castor oil. I just brought in a really lovely castor oil pack set to my online store. So head to stratumaesthetics.com to check that out. Castor oil is really interesting because it increases circulation, and when applied locally over the liver, it increases blood flow, and this increased circulation helps the liver process and eliminate toxins more efficiently. Castor oil has a specific fatty acid called ricinoleic acid, and that can actually promote the contraction of smooth muscles in the lymphatic vessels and the intestines, which is why it also helps with digestion. And it's going to help move lymph fluid more efficiently through the body, which can prevent stagnant lymph and promote detoxification. Next is coffee enemas. Who knew I would be telling the world that I do coffee enemas? I began doing them more regularly in the lead up to my skin healing. Coffee enemas stimulate the liver and the gallbladder to release bile. Increased bile flow helps to remove fat-soluble toxins from our body, which can reduce the toxic load that can lead to inflammation in our skin. And then coffee also contains compounds like caffeine, obviously, and palmitic acid, which activate the production of glutathione, which is like our body's master antioxidant. And this antioxidant boosts the liver's ability to neutralize free radicals, which can also reduce systematic inflammation. So if you're interested, there's a company called Happy Bum that I really like. And if you purchase their product, they walk you through the whole thing, and they have a Facebook group. There's also another Facebook group that's like, I think it's called Coffee Enema Support Group that I'm in also. And they are super gnarly about it in that group. I think they're a little over the top in my opinion, but it is a really helpful group because it's kind of intimidating and scary at first. Like, what am I doing? Those two resources I think can be really helpful. Next is hydration. Staying hydrated helps perioral dermatitis by keeping the skin cells functioning properly. So when our skin's well hydrated, our cells can repair and renew themselves. It's going to speed up that healing that can get broken down in that cycle, and then it's also going to take down that inflammation. And this is one reason why I really love a hydrosol here, especially like a chamomile hydrosol. Laurel makes a really lovely chamomile hydrosol, and that's something I think can be really supportive here. Next up is neem capsules and neem oil. So neem, Neem. Neem is really helpful because it's anti-inflammatory, it's antifungal, it's detoxifying, antibacterial, and this can help to address a lot of the symptoms that we're experiencing with perioral dermatitis, especially like that bacterial or yeast overgrowth. I first heard of neem as a gardener because neem is often used as a natural pesticide, which is a whole other conversation about if you should use neem or not in your garden. But I had heard of it as a natural pesticide, and so I just think that's very interesting. In Ayurveda, neem helps to support healthy blood, and I'll talk about a little later here like what that actually means. But the skin is an extension or a reflection of the blood. And so when we're supporting the blood, when we're helping to reduce toxins in the blood, this can support our skin. It's also very beneficial to the liver. It's a bitter, and so anytime something is bitter, it's supportive to the liver. It's also going to be very cooling for a hot liver. And it's going to cool excess pitta, which is the dosha associated with heat and inflammation. It supports the immune system. This was like a big thing for me. I followed the directions on the bottle as far as how much to take, and that was one that I still use anytime I have any type of a skin issue. I'll start to take it again. Do note that neem is not appropriate during pregnancy or breastfeeding. As always, with any herb, you need to do your due diligence to make sure it's appropriate for your unique body. So be sure to do that. Next up, number 8 out of 10 things that I want to share with you is Osmia clay soap. So Osmia is a skincare company out of Carbondale, Colorado, and they make a black clay soap, which was actually made by a doctor for perioral dermatitis. She experienced it, and so she made a soap to support it. It's really gentle. It supports the skin without feeding that bacteria or yeast. The black clay and Dead Sea mud help to calm inflammation. And then it also has coconut milk, which provides a very light nourishment without being too heavy or sitting on the skin. It's free of all of the things that you don't want to have that will trigger flare-ups like fragrance, harsh detergents, harsh emollients, and it's just a really great option for soothing irritated skin. So what I did with this cleanser, which was what was recommended on the website, was to do 14 days of just cleansing and then not putting any other skincare. This is basically to recalibrate the skin and allow the barrier to do what it needs to do. So I went 2 weeks without any skincare, no moisturizer, no SPF. I was very uncomfortable. It was very dry, but I decided to just trust the process. This is while I'm doing all of the other things, because we can't just do one thing, unfortunately. And by the end of that 2 weeks was around the time my skin started to feel like skin again. Next up, number 9 out of 10 is high frequency. So a high frequency machine you may have seen on TikTok. A lot of people think it's a new trend, but it's actually super old school. It's a glass electrode. It looks like a little glass wand that you turn this on, and it sounds really buzzy. It's like a bug zapper. I will link the one that I like in the show notes here, but a high frequency machine was invented by Nikola Tesla in the 1800s for strep throat. And it basically is going to turn on, it starts to buzz, and it creates ozone on the outside of this glass electrode. And ozone is 3 molecules of oxygen. The specific bacteria that we have an overgrowth of here cannot thrive or live in the presence of oxygen. And so it's really helping to support balance within the microbiome. And it also is going to support healing of the skin as well. So I'm a big fan. This is also something you don't want to use if you're pregnant, if you have a pacemaker, or any type of metal implants in your body, but I use this in my treatments all the time. The last modality that I want to share about is LED. So both red and blue LED are super helpful for keeping your skin balanced here. Red LED is going to boost circulation, which is going to help your skin heal faster. And then blue LED is going to target the overgrowth of bacteria or yeast without irritating the skin. Soluma makes a handheld device that has both red and blue in it. So unfortunately, I have not seen a mask on the market yet. I could be wrong, but I haven't seen it that has both red and blue in it. So if you are experiencing perioral, if you are prone to acne and you want both, I really like that Soluma handheld device. All right, so as we wrap up, I really want to explore the emotional and energetic connections here. I want to start by talking about looking at this through a lens of an approach called German New Medicine. So this is a holistic approach to health that views any imbalance in the body, including skin conditions, as the body's response to unresolved emotional conflicts. According to this approach, emotional events trigger biological programs in the body, leading to symptoms as a way for the body to heal. In this paradigm, every symptom is seen as meaningful. It's reflecting the body's attempt to resolve an inner conflict, which I really love because I'm a big believer that our body is never betraying us. Our body is always working back to homeostasis in whatever way it sees as the most helpful. The association with perioral is what's called a separation conflict. So a sense of being distanced or isolated or even misunderstood by others. Maybe you feel distanced from society. Maybe you feel distanced in your friendships or your romantic relationships or your family. So maybe you're feeling isolated in some way. And then because it's around the mouth, this could point to struggles with communication or self-expression. Maybe times when words or emotions or frustrations are being unheard, or maybe you're withholding them. So for me, I'm thinking about this was during COVID and I felt I couldn't express myself. I couldn't actually share how I felt about it because it was just a scary time to talk about holistic health, honestly. Looking at it in other ways, energetically, our skin is our boundary with the external world. And so this may be connected to where are you not setting boundaries? Where are you not setting boundaries with others, with yourself? Maybe struggles with self-worth or difficulties feeling accepted. It can reflect vulnerability with the mouth. This is a tool for speaking. It's for nourishment. So maybe where are you not truly nourishing yourself? I definitely think that there's a tie to perfectionism here. Control can play a role when we feel pressured to meet unrealistic expectations that we've set for ourselves, or maybe that have been set for us externally. This tension can surface through the skin. And I think there's also an important connection to pleasure. Pleasure is safety, as my friend Margaret James always says. So when we're denying ourselves indulgences and nourishment, whether emotionally or physically, this deprivation can manifest as inflammation in both traditional Chinese medicine, the act of eating or speaking and smiling is reflecting how we nourish ourselves emotionally, how we nourish ourselves socially. So if someone's feeling guilty about enjoying life or sets really strict rules around pleasure or really strict rules around food, can be so disruptive to both the gut and the skin. I want to finish with, as I mentioned before, my friend Margaret James. She's so wise. I'm such a weird fangirl of hers. Check her out on Instagram. And she's an Ayurvedic practitioner. And I told her I was doing a podcast about this. And I asked her from an Ayurvedic standpoint what she thought about perioral dermatitis. She was the one who originally had told me about neem. And she said that in Ayurveda, skin, as I said before, is a reflection of the blood, which means healthy skin is deeply connected to the quality of our blood tissue, which plays a crucial role in delivering nutrients to our skin tissue. It's important for removing waste and ensuring that our body is vibrant and balanced. But if it becomes imbalanced due to factors like poor diet or toxins known as ama in Ayurveda, or excess heat, also known as a pitta imbalance, it can lead to skin problems like rashes, acne, perioral dermatitis. So this impure rakta, aka blood, is believed to push out toxins through our skin, leading to this chronic irritation and inflammation. We really want to work on supporting this by eating a diet that's supportive of blood purification. So this looks like bitter greens like dandelion, neem. Beets are really supportive for detoxifying the blood. Incorporating turmeric or pomegranate, avoiding spicy, fried, and processed foods, which can increase heat and create toxins, aka that ama. Hydration, and then lifestyle and movement. So incorporating exercise to promote circulation and prevent stagnation. Practicing abhyanga, which is self-massage. Practicing emotional balance, managing stress with things like journaling, gentle yoga, mindfulness. And then getting a little bit more into this pitta imbalance. A dosha in Ayurveda is an energetic force that represents how the natural elements like air, fire, water combine to shape our body, shape our mind, our health. And there are 3 main doshas, Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, and each person has a unique blend of each of these. And Margaret talked about how there can be a connection with any type of skin issue. There's a connection to a pitta imbalance, and specifically a pitta imbalance within your digestion. When pitta digestion is imbalanced, it can look like acid reflux, heartburn, excessive hunger or thirst, loose stools or diarrhea, inflammation in the digestive tract. Maybe you feel really irritable if meals are missed. So maintaining balance within pitta digestion is going to look like avoiding spicy, acidic, fried foods that aggravate that heat in your gut, and then incorporating cooling foods like cucumber, mint, coconut, and making sure to eat at regular intervals. And then again, staying hydrated, but avoiding things like caffeine and alcohol, which can provoke pitta. Oh my gosh, we covered a lot today. We dove deep into perioral dermatitis, from understanding what it is to exploring the triggers like stress, like topical steroids, heavy products, gut health imbalances. We talked about how it shows up with microbiome disruptions and how we can have overgrowth of bacteria or yeast that makes this condition worse. I shared my journey with you. We also discussed how repairing the skin's barrier is key to healing, and I shared practical tools. We also explored the emotional and energetic side of this condition, how unresolved emotional conflicts, how perfectionism, struggles with communication and self-expression can show up as skin flare-ups. And then I touched a little bit on the Ayurvedic wisdom of all of this. In the end, healing your perioral dermatitis is never just going to be about skincare. This is about tuning in and listening to what your body is trying to tell you and finding the tools and practices that feel right for you. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope this gave you some insight, and I hope it gave you some encouragement on your own journey. I hope you stay curious here, stay open, remember to nourish yourself, not just physically, but emotionally too. I will be back next week, and until then, be well. You've been listening to the Skin Earth Vitality podcast. If you like what you heard today, consider giving me a 5-star rating. It helps other people just like you to find the show. You can shop products and find all of my offerings on my website, stratumaesthetics.com, and follow me on my social channels at Stratum Aesthetics.